apparently the police in the UK are woke, and now they're not going to be anymore. The right in the UK has such a weird culture war narrative going right now. Supposedly, right now, there's a crackdown on all of the wokeness that's taken over the institutions in the UK, and they're flushing it out. And people are, I guess, cheering for it. I'm not from the UK, so I don't know what the general sentiment is towards this stuff, but it seems like the British far right is on this weird victory lap arc, for a lack of a better name for it. And this newest video in regards to that is about this supposedly damning report about woke UK policing. I don't know if this is going to tie into the made-up 250,000 immigrant child grooming gang targets or whatever, the people who were doing the grooming gang thing. They literally made up that number, by the way. That whole report is just a bunch of anecdotal examples and stories and then made up stats. So, as bad as those instances are, I don't think making up stats to make it sound like these things happen more than they do is really helping anybody, to tell you the truth, but that's what the far right does. They lie to serve their ends. I don't know if this guy is some far right chud, but going off of his branding and the title, I have a feeling he might be. So let's find out. The police are stopping their wokeness.
I was right, and I should take no pleasure in saying that, because being right means that the police service in England and Wales has been failing the public for many years, and they've been told to stop being woke, because a major government-backed report published today confirms what many of us have been saying for a long time now, and that is that the police have been too focused on woke culture wars and not focused enough on actually catching criminals. And a fundamental...
There is no police focused on woke culture wars, my dude. You are making this up and dragging police into it yourself.
Reset is now required. So good to have it confirmed in an official government-backed report. What I've been saying in the last few days, at least, if not weeks and months, that we need a major reset in many different...
Okay, so he is talking about the report where they made up numbers. Okay, so for those that don't know, the report in question, it takes hours and hours to read. It's the big grooming gang report, the inquiry report. And the reason why it's so long isn't because it's just got so much data and methodology to it. It's because 99% of it is individual stories, like heavy in detail stories of individuals who claim they were groomed and were victims of that. And they probably were. And then what the the inquiry does, is it took the data from 3, counties, we'll call it, in the UK, and basically said, okay, well, assuming the vast majority of cases are never even reported, which is probably true, and extrapolating that data out to the entire country, assuming the same exact trends follow across the country, then that is how many grooming gang suspects must be in the UK. 250,000. Since, what is it, the 60s or the 80s is how far this back this apparently goes? No. When you make up a number like that, you can't go around running around with that number claiming this is real, this is how many grooming gang guys there are in the UK.
Areas. And so if you like my input on these things, please do subscribe to the channel. We are painfully close to 1 million subscribers. Please do subscribe, and that really does support my channel. I'm ever grateful to you for doing so. So this report was co-chaired by Lord Blunkett, a former Labour Home Secretary, not a Reform MP, not a right-wing commentator, and together with him, Lord Herbert, a former Conservative policing minister. It was commissioned by the College of Policing with the support of the Home Office. So it is just about as establishment, as cross-party, as authoritative as a report of this kind gets. And what it says is incredibly damning. So let me go through the key findings with you, because there's several here and they each deserve to be stated very clearly. And so first of all, not one of the 43 police forces in England and Wales was rated outstanding for leadership in the most recent inspection round. Not a single one. But
isn't it interesting how all of a sudden the right is beating the drums for police reform? Isn't that interesting? So you're telling me these police departments are doing a terrible job, they're getting a shitload of funding, and they're incompetent and not doing their jobs right, and they're also hurting people that aren't committing crimes, like that one guy who got stabbed and they handcuffed him and let him bleed out. And meanwhile, the political group fighting for police reform to even defund these overfunded police who are doing all this awful malpractice, we'll call it. You're against the left now for this? I get that it's because the left is you know, they defend racial minorities and the right's all about attacking racial minorities. But it's really funny when you try to apply the right standards to other issues and you're like, wait, why do you disagree with the left on this issue then?
Almost a third were rated as needing improvement. 2 were rated as inadequate, which is painful to read. Secondly, 8 former or serving chief constables are either under disciplinary action or awaiting the results of investigations out of 43.
See, these are the parts of the report that are very real and legit. Even the anecdotal stories of individual victims are probably real. The problem is that it tries to extrapolate all of these anecdotes into made up data. Like they estimate data. And it's like, I'm sure there's value in making those estimations and having those internally, maybe using them as some kind of internal guideline to try and increase the amount of police investigation into this problem. But to argue that we should base immigration policy on it, that we should make racial discrimination and policing an overtly legal and encouraged practice. And I mean, go down the list. Like, we should not use made-up data points to argue for policy like this.
Forces, which is a staggering proportion in anyone's measure of the most senior officers in the country facing misconduct proceedings. Thirdly, 47 investigations into alleged misconduct by chief officers have been opened since 2018 alone. These include investigations...
Sound familiar, my fellow Americans? Turns out, we're not that different from the British after all. Their cops are just like ours. Always under investigation. Always under some penalty or department leave or something. But never fired. Never arrested. Even when they've committed a crime.
For cronyism, i.e. favouring your mates, nepotism, favouring your relatives, abuse of power, which is obviously, everyone knows what abuse of power is. You are abusing the powers that you're bestowed with by statute or otherwise for sexual purposes and corruption. Fourthly, only...
So, we should defund the police then? Glad you agree, good chap. Tolly ho, we're friends now. We're comrades even, you agree? We should defund the police. Very well then.
13% of constables and 17% of sergeants surveyed agreed that they are in a well-led and managed organisation. When your own officers, the people on the ground, doing the job, going out, meeting and facing the public, say this to an overwhelming degree that their organisation is not well led, this is a crisis of internal confidence that cannot be papered over. Lord Blunkett's conclusion is that at the moment, the service simply isn't good enough. At the moment, the morale and motivation of many of those who work in the service needs a reset. There's that word again, the word that I've been using, and I am now humbled and pleased, not pleased, if you like, that I was correct in that we need a reset in these things. But this is his words.
Is this Great Reset posting? For those who don't know, I believe the Great Reset is a libertarian theory that very soon, it's always soon, never now though, sometime soon, and soon has been going for decades, but soon, the Great Reset will happen, where I guess the economy will reset, politics will reset, it'll be like a big completing of a cycle. Famously, Tim Pool is obsessed with the Great Reset and has been claiming it's on the horizon for his entire career. It's like the political equivalent of like being the doomsday sayer on the street, saying any day now, and like you've seen the guy there for 20 years saying that any day the world is gonna end. It's like that.
Now, not mine. We need a reset. This is a Labour former Home Secretary. That is where we are right now. So anybody that's saying that this is the left and the right and Labour and Conservative and all the rest of it, it's just not the case. It is now...
Well, what's frustrating is that you know that Labour and more left-leaning parties in the UK are willing to engage with this because they recognize the need for police reform and the fact that police in the UK are able to get away with a lot of, improper practices and not doing their job well, and that the right always loves to protect these institutions such as the police, and the only way to get concessions enough from the right that you can actually make substantial police reform will be to get them on board with this idea that at least they're not enforcing the law correctly in this one area, right? Like there's finally a cultural pivot point where even people on the right are now willing to call out the police. And as much as it's not for the right reasons at all, at least they're willing to actually criticize the police for not doing their jobs right, and they aren't just incessantly defending them.
As like I said, as establishment as this can possibly get. And so this is really about the woke culture wars that has been identified that they need to eradicate. So this is the part that I suspect many of you have been waiting for, because the report does not shy away from the culture wars question. It actually tackles it head on. Lord Blunkett said, and I quote, "We make it clear in the report that there's no room for culture wars or woke. The idea that people should be diverted onto other issues is entirely wrong."
I am the ghost of Christmas reading comprehension. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does that sentence, "there is no room in this report for culture wars or for woke," that sounds to me like a denunciation of any political partisanship, not announcing partisanship against the left exclusively. Isn't that statements like, because the culture war stuff is all about that's what the right's all about. They love the culture war. And woke is like the catch-all term for left and progressive. So the article says we are not here to be, or the report indicates it's not trying to fight any culture war, and it's not trying to be woke. And this guy's like, see? It's denouncing the left and the wokeness in policing. That is not what they're saying.
It isn't the job of the police in our country to take sides.
I didn't think I would have to defend the report in this video from someone who's misunderstanding it in like such a blatant way, but like the report isn't bad. Like I'm not against that report. I think it, people are weaponizing it for the wrong reasons, but like, really? Do I have to clarify such basic stuff?
Of any sort, it is the job of the police to deliver. And as I've said many times just recently, the police really have a job to do. They have common law and statutory powers with which to uphold their duty, and they should not be taking sides. They should not be taking part in protests. They should not be supporting one side or another in any such protests, or even in any kind of demonstration. Sir Stephen Watson, one of Britain's most senior police officers, went even further than this. He said that policing in Britain has adopted the language of activism. He said official guidance has overcorrected to combat accusations of racism. And he said the police had allowed the perception.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely real. Like, I definitely think there probably have been internal memos within police departments to be like, hey, so everyone thinks that cops are racist now, and they've got reason to believe that. Let's really try not to come off that way. What's funny about this is this isn't even like the wokeification of police. It's just police departments trying to avoid controversy. I guess you could call that wokeification. I mean, they often do, right? Like when a company is like, no, we're not gonna tweet slurs off of our Twitter account. People are like, whoa, the company has gone woke. So I guess that is woke. I don't know, man.
Of two-tier policing to take hold, in part as a result of anti-racism guidance that advised officers to treat suspects differently depending on their ethnicity. And again,
usually when they train police officers not to be racist, they train them to not see race, to not be discriminatory in their policing. So I'd be interested to hear about this.
As I've said just recently, our equality laws, which protects people with protected characteristics, protects all ethnicities, not one over another. And so when the police do at least have the appearance of two-tier policing, favoring one or the other, or setting up training programs.
Have the appearance of two-tier policing? Okay, so he's even admitting that's not what the report actually claims. He even hedges right there. Good one, buddy.
And pushing people on different courses and such for anti-racism and publishing anti-racism guidance. This is skewing the police force in one direction, which is wrong, which is now not just my view, I'm very pleased to say. And you'll be very pleased to hear that, we are not wrong to want to level all of this.
Once again, he's going off of the line. This report will not lean into the culture war or wokeness. He is going off of a line that says the report on policing will not be partisan, and claiming, so this means that police are going to be forced to no longer be woke. He is making the biggest reach of all time here.
And have a truly equal treatment by police. But this is what they've said. The report itself says, unambiguously, that policing by consent requires officers to act without fear or favour. And then this line, which should really be on a placard outside every police headquarters in the country, the background or identity of any perpetrator or victim of a crime should have absolutely no bearing on the quality of treatment or respect which was given to them by the police service.
Okay, so where in that does it say that people who are brown, for instance, get better treatment? Because that is literally the you cannot discriminate in policing rule. What? This literally says you can't be discriminatory towards anybody. This is fine.
No bearing whatsoever. Full stop. That is the standard that it should be. And that is now what the report is saying, quite clearly, by implication, that it has not been met. I was asked just...
Okay, where? Show us where the report says that, please. Actually, show us where the report says this.
Recently about the Henry Novak case, and I said respectfully that I can't draw any conclusions because of the pending IOPC investigation, the pending inquest, I believe. But this report specifically references the horrendous murder of Henry Novak, an 18-year-old student who was handcuffed by police whilst he lay dying because his killer, Vikram Digwal...
That's the thing I mentioned earlier. The guy who got handcuffed and they didn't help him and he bled out. Told you. I knew he would mention it. These guys have like 3 or 4 or 5 different stories. Like, if you follow these guys, like they don't actually have that many events that you need to be aware of to like be up to date on all their little references and their propaganda. Like, if you know the bare basics of the Irina Zarutska story, you know the bare basics of the Carmelo Anthony story, and you know the bare basics about, I forget his name, but this guy, the guy he's talking about now who got handcuffed, like, you've got like 70 to 80% of their like figureheads who they kind of use as a flag to carry into battle for their political arguments. Like, if you actually know the stories behind their like weaponized tragedies, you can destroy their arguments, and you don't need to learn many. I know it's like, I don't want to have to learn all these nonsense like weaponized tragedies for their political agenda every time they do it. It's not that many though. It's the same deal as, like, the right-wing memes, where they've used the same lady screaming up into the sky, and the same triggered-looking person with the glasses, who in the original video isn't even triggered or upset in any way. Like, it's the same thing. They've used the same images for over a decade, like 14, 15 years now, and, yeah, it's not going anywhere. Maybe not that long, about a decade. So, it's the same deal, but with, like, individual stories or tragedies that they blow up to try to make propaganda out of. Or yeah, like Big Red. Like, if you know Big Red, glasses lady, and the person in like the neon coat screaming up in the air, if you know those 3 stories, you've got like 80% of the right's straw man of the left.
Were told a wicked lie that Henry had been racially abusive towards him. Police acted on that accusation, and Henry Novak, the victim, was treated as a suspect. He lay dying in handcuffs. This report acknowledges that this case has renewed the debate around 2-tier policing in Britain, and police chiefs have since announced a review on their guidance, specifically the guidance...
Okay, let's look up this 2-tier policing in Britain. 2-tier policing is a highly controversial and debated term in the UK, referring to the allegation that law enforcement inconsistently applies the law by treating some groups, causes, or protests more harshly than others. Critics often from the political right argue that police are overly lenient with progressive or minority-led protests such as Black Lives Matter or pro-Palestinian marches, but act with excessive force or scrutiny towards right-wing protests or demonstrations against immigration. Okay. Yeah, it's because a lot of the terror groups in the UK are right-wing, and so they get treated like the potential terrorists that they are. Sorry, buddies. Sorry, anti-immigration, super xenophobic chuds in the UK. Your government treats you as potential terrorists, as ours should to the people like you here as well. Sorry, buddy.
That suggested that racial equality didn't mean treating everyone the same or being colorblind. That guidance, that specific written guidance issued to serving officers telling them that equal treatment was not the goal. That is the guidance that is now being reviewed in the wake of the murdered teenager being handcuffed whilst he lay dying. And despite all of that,
So wait, conservatives are now believing women and believing allegations by children nonetheless, or of child grooming nonetheless. You know, they spent quite a few of the last, few years denying that Trump did anything wrong, or that Epstein did anything wrong, or that Trump was doing anything wrong by being such good buddies with Epstein. So it's crazy to see them caring now, especially with all that fighting against Me Too and claiming Me Too needs to die. It's kind of crazy how now all of a sudden they believe women, right? Isn't that crazy?
Starmer, at Prime Minister's Questions last month, said that he did not believe that there was 2-tier policing in the UK. Now, I've said recently that if you step...
Yeah, 2-tier policing, at least according to what we just read there, is like a completely culture war thing. Like, it's a very partisan right-wing claim. It's like... it's similar to how when you hear conservatives say gender hysteria, It's like, what? That's not a thing. This is a buzzword for political, like for propaganda purposes. This is not a real usable phrase with any actual merit or value outside of propagandizing people into hating trans people. And that is the same case here with this word. It's not an actual practice they do in the UK.
Back far enough. On the whole, that's what it might look like. But when you zoom in onto particular cases and you compare two like cases, there probably is. And it's probably clear as day that it is.
Probably.
But yet he accused
True,
Nigel Farage of exploiting Henry Novak's...
I love all the edging because he can't even point to anything in... I bet he hasn't read the report either. So he can't actually point to any examples in the report where they confirm that two-tier policing has been happening in the UK.
Tragic murder to create grievance and division, even though it was a very real event. Lord Blunkett's answer, when asked the same question on the BBC, he said, I think there's perception, and then said that there's no room for culture wars or woke. The pendulum has swung too far. And so again,
once again, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. He said in the report, they're not focusing on the culture war or woke, as in, this is not a partisan report. That is what it said.
For emphasis, this is a former Labour Home Secretary on the BBC with his own government-backed report declining to give the same clear denial that Keir Starmer gave, instead acknowledging that there is a real problem.
Which is why he specified that the report is not partisan, because he was a left-leaning candidate or left-leaning politician, and he didn't want the rest of the British government to be like, oh, well, this is just being, this is just a left-leaning thing, or this is just playing into one side or the other. Like, the report itself is fine. It's not even biased, I would argue. I think it does a pretty good job outside of the, assuming data. But outside of that, it's pretty solid. Like, it means well, and it does delve into and investigate real issues with British policing. Surprise, surprise, I, a leftist, have problems with the police and how they operate. Who'd have thought?
How policing culture has developed in this country. And then we talk about leadership failures, because beyond the culture wars question, this report paints a picture of leadership failure, which is serious and systemic. Promotions, it says, are subjective, inconsistent, and shaped in the image of leaders, creating fertile ground for nepotism. He said, getting rid of what we describe, and I don't use the word lightly, of nepotism within the service, and that really affects people's confidence about promotion.
I agree with this. This is, we're actually quoting something here because this is a real problem that the report actually delves into and not a made-up thing like what he's been ranting about for the last 10 minutes, but, well, 9 minutes, but still. This one's actually real. This is why he can actually quote the report on it.
And about how they are treated.
Well, actually, he's not quoting the report. He's quoting this Lord Plunkett guy, but still.
Report warns that police forces are struggling with excessive paperwork,
it's a
scarce
quote,
resources, and leadership cultures that are demotivating and overly risk-averse. And there's also a telling observation from Major General Nick Coley, Commandant of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, who sat on the commission and wrote separately about his findings. He said, leaders are not born. They are nurtured and developed over time. In the army, there's a clear, centrally funded pathway for leadership development at every level. The police, he concluded, deserve the same, but currently don't have it, which is...
Okay, now we're arguing for militarizing the police, or at least structuring the police like the military, which could be a slippery slope, perhaps. I don't think people are super on board with that idea.
Why the report recommends a Sandhurst-style National Academy for police leadership, reformed recruitment...
That does sound fine, though. Okay, I mean, that's what the report does call for, and I do think that a lot of the report's conclusions that the police need to be significantly reformed. I agree with that.
Nationally accredited training for all new constables and a new senior constable rank to recognise and reward experienced frontline officers. But what has the government said about all this? Well, the policing minister, Sarah Jones, said, we know that police leaders face significant challenges and that current structures do not allow them to realise the full potential of their workforce. We've also seen too many examples where leadership has failed to meet the standards that the officers and the public rightly expect. That is a fairly candid acknowledgement from a policing minister, and the recommendation from a Sandhurst-style academy has, at least in principle, government support. But here's the thing. Writing a report...
Keep in mind, this is not like a, wow, everybody's moved to the right and agrees with the right that the police are anti-white people now. This is a, wow, even the right is now anti-cop. Because the left has always been anti-cop. The left has always thought the police were racist and were applying their policing in unfair ways and were being racist in how they were applying their suspicion. We've always believed that. We've always been arguing that. Now the right's on board with that idea. They just think that they're racist against white people. Now the cops are being, like, assaulted, you could argue, on all fronts politically. You got the left saying you're racist against people of color, and you've got the right saying you're racist against white people. The only people who are under attack here are the police.
Is the easy part. Major General Carol...
I mean, like, politically, not literally. I want to even borderline Fed post in Trump's America. That motherfucker wants any excuse to get me in the hole.
He said exactly that himself. He said, I recognize that writing the report is the easy bit. Implementation is the true challenge. And I would add my own views here and say some of the videos that I've seen just recently, and I don't want to be too critical about the police here, but I've seen videos of multiple...
I don't want to be too critical about the police here. Why? Why not? Why the fuck do you not want to be critical about the police all of a sudden, huh? This whole video, it's about how the police have been improperly handling this issue, how so many children have been allowed to be groomed by these supposed immigrant groomer. Wow, so now the police, we're not criticizing the police that handcuffed that guy and let him bleed out after he was stabbed? But like, oh, now we can't criticize the police because, oh my god, we gotta... So you still have the boys in blue, thin blue line brain rot going through your veins right now. And you, like, even now, I love how he still has to hedge criticism of the police. I guess the right just hasn't caught up with the left on the police reform issue yet. Maybe one day. Maybe if another 250,000 migrant groomers comes into the UK, then you guys will be ready for police reform.
Police officers trying to subdue one suspect, and they are failing.
I joke. I like to troll the Chuds. I like to troll the Chuds.
To do so. One of them in a video I saw just this morning had his own baton. The police officer had his own baton taken from him and was struck on the head, it appeared to me from the video, with his own baton. Then the suspect made off on an electric bike. Now, when we have a situation where two police officers who are supposed to be trained to be able to subdue suspects in this manner and arrest them and detain them, and they are unable to do so, and they are struggling to do that, that strikes me as a clear indication that they do not receive sufficient training. Now, having done martial arts for more than 30 years now and had all sorts of different types of fights with all sorts of different arts, even having a black belt is absolutely not an indication that you can fight or defend yourself or defend someone else.
I'm glad you said that, because I was about to say the same. Like, true, but like fights in real life are unpredictable.
Only when you have trained for so many years and you have dedicated specific training to restrain and detain somebody would you be able to do so. And in my view, the police simply don't have the appropriate training. And I draw that conclusion from the videos that I see, because when any of these interactions happen, it is quite clear to me that the vast majority of these police officers just simply don't have the level of training required. Now, I have worked alongside some officers and some former officers.
Okay, I don't care about this. Yeah, I like how the right-wing Chuds, they're so blatant with their clickbait, too, because there's nothing in this video that proves the cops were woke. I guess it's just more of their propaganda on this buzzword, the two-tier policing buzzword. And I like how you look it up and immediately all the results are like, yeah, it's a right-wing buzzword. It's a highly controversial term. It's not accepted broadly. And this guy's peddling it like it's some actual, like, verifiable thing in criminology. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, if you found it entertaining, educational, or interesting in any way, then please leave a like and a comment down below. It really does help the channel a lot. Subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications if you want to see more from me in the future. And of course, thank you for watching, as always. And I eagerly hope that you have a good one.